This month's lesson, we want to talk about a subtle process in meditation that you can do to help keep your mind and your heart clear and light. And this is important because it's easy for us to get caught in patterns and behaviors and habits while still practicing meditation, studying those spiritual texts which help to inspire us, and listening and contemplating what our teachers have shared with us. We can continue doing that, but still often get caught in patterns where we are mentally heavy or stuck, or heavy within our heart, or stuck within our ability to recognize opportunities in life. So we want to make sure to every now and then spend some time enlightening our mind, inviting light and clarity and openness into our heart. Because by doing this, this will help us live more effectively. It'll help us be more present with our experiences in life. It'll help us respond better to what's going on in our lives. And spiritually speaking, it will help us to be responsive to the activity of grace. It will also help us to be able to broaden our mind and expand our consciousness so that we continue growing, making progress, learning, moving forward. One of the most difficult things to watch is seeing students get stuck on a plateau within their spiritual life, or getting stuck at a plateau in their life in general, and they can't see other options. They can't see other possibilities. They're not aware of the capacity for change and growth, and moving more fully into a state of openness and inner freedom. So to get beyond that, what do we do? First, we have to have the ability to understand it is possible to go beyond where we are right now. I can remember Mr. Davis, when people would ask him, how do I know when I've reached the goal? Or how do I know when I've hit the peak experience within meditation? And he would often encourage students to simply ask and inquire, is there anything beyond this? Is there anything more for me to know and to learn? Without maintaining the attitude that, yes, I already know it all, but having the sense of curiosity, like maybe I don't know everything. And so is there anything more that I could understand? Or is there any way that my awareness could be expanded even further than it is right now? And you contemplate that. And what you'll find is maybe in meditation, you have responses that it's as if they open inner doors for you, and you realize, wow, I had no idea that that kind of realization was possible. It may not happen in meditation. It may be that in your life, you start to pick up on new ideas, or new opportunities are brought to your mind. And you explore them and you follow them and you see where they take you. So one thing we want to make sure to do is to really avoid stagnation, because life is movement. Our breath is constantly moving. Nature is constantly cycling. Day is turning into night. Water is evaporating, then raining, then turning into rivers, and then back to the ocean again. People are being born and dying. There's this constant cycle of movement. And when we learn to bring more lightness and clarity and openness to our heart, it's easier for us to recognize that and embrace it fully, which in turn makes us more alive, because we're aware and we're engaged and we're participating in life and we're not getting stuck anywhere. So learning to bring lightness and clarity and openness to the heart helps. Now, one thing it's important to remember is, if you have experienced a lot of difficulty and trauma and loss, it's possible you may be well locked down and don't really want to entertain new changes or new things, because you've already experienced so much that you just can't even imagine it. So again, this will always take me back to my initial statements. Anytime someone wants to learn meditation or Kriya yoga, this works really well if you don't have a heck of a lot of skeletons in your closet or traumas that you haven't dealt with. So if you know that this is true for you, this is not to say you shouldn't entertain these practices or try, but you definitely might want to find a counselor or someone skilled to help you heal those things and to find a sense of safety in what happens in the world with change and letting go and grieving and moving on. Because every moment is a death, really. Nothing stays the same. And the more that we can bring this lightness into our heart and acknowledge that and embrace that, again, the more alive we tend to become. So keep that in mind. With the mind, the mind helps us to make sense of what's going on in this infinite consciousness. It's like our contact point as a little individual, a little personality that thinks I'm Ryan. It's that contact point which helps to make sense of and cognize anything that I can possibly cognize in this world, so that I can respond appropriately and act appropriately as a contact point for this infinite consciousness, just like you are a contact point for this infinite consciousness expressing. But the mind, when it is clear and when it has more light and openness and freedom, it's able to see possibilities. It doesn't get locked into one way and then trapped there. It doesn't become old and shriveled and despondent or doubtful. It sees possibilities, and it's adaptable, and it's able to perceive to the best of its ability, again, those flows of grace. And the clearer it is, the easier it is to interpret what does the infinite consciousness, what does God, what does the divine, what does that want to do? How does that want to flow through you as an individualized aspect of that? And again, this is something that we have gone over a bit more within the divine purpose class for the Patreon members, Journal of a Kriya Yoga Teacher Patreon site. So if you're interested in exploring that, you might want to become a Patreon member. Of course, I'm planning on releasing those at some point in time once I get a chance to edit them as well. So no rush there. But anyway, we want to have this light and clarity in our mind, because it helps us, again, be present, see possibilities. So how is this done? That's what we need to discuss now. First of all, it's important to have already meditated. So as a Kriya yogi, as a meditator, you want to meditate every day, sometimes twice a day if you're able to. And do your best using your techniques, prayer, contemplation, to access and abide in a thought-free state, peaceful, settled state, where you feel safe and calm and serene. Now, once you've done that and you've concluded your meditation practice, there's some very simple things that you can do to lighten your heart, to lighten your mind. And really, it's just a matter of imagination, visualization, and curiosity. We don't want to get into magical thinking. However, we tend to see and experience the world based on those consistent patterns, those consistent loops of thought. that, again, are who we are habitually. And so if you can start to break those up, you start to see the world a little differently. You start to see more possibility. You start to feel clearer within it. So one of the things you have to do after you meditate is simply bring your awareness to your heart. And as you feel the heart, as you feel the area in the center of the chest, the heart chakra, I think anatomically the heart is a little lower than that, but the heart chakra itself, that energy center, physiological center within the chest at the level of in between the shoulder blades. You have to feel that area, and you'll know almost immediately how open and clear you might feel within the heart, because you will have the response, the feedback of, do you feel tense and tight, like you have to protect the area? Do you feel open and safe and clear and free? Well, what we want to do is just simply acknowledge where we are and then start to entertain more clarity, more openness. So you want to feel the area. And as you breathe, you let the breath be the anchor. And you simply, in your mind, you can even say, I invite more light, more openness, more clarity to my heart. And knowing that you've already meditated, knowing that you live in a supportive universe, that the infinite, the divine is all around you, all through you, that infinite intelligence is all around and all through you, that by simply acknowledging that, you open the door a little bit. Now what do you do? Well, maybe that's all you need. Usually not how it works, but maybe that's all you need. And if so, then you simply stay with that. But the next step would be, okay, now let's imagine if I felt safe, if I felt free, if I felt like there was this buoyant, by buoyant, I mean almost like floating, uplifting lightness within my heart, such that when I'm sitting there and I'm meditating, it's almost as if I feel my chest opening and I feel my heart rising, and it feels good. It's like when an opportunity comes to you and you know it's just a wonderful opportunity, how you just feel so open and happy about that possibility. That's what you're inviting in. And you're imagining it. And you want to, if you can, use your inner your mind's eye to imagine as though there's a radiant light there. And you just sit there in that way for 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you have extra time, holding the possibility that your heart can be more open, clearer, freer, safer, stronger, brighter. And that brilliance, that light, is a manifestation of spirit flowing through you. It's natural. It has its own strength and it has its own current. So the more that you do it, it creates like a current. It's like when you turn on a garden hose, the more you turn it on, the more water flows through. And you don't have to worry about it, it just flows through. So by doing this, it's like turning on that garden hose of light. And you imagine, well, what would it feel like if I felt freer and clearer throughout the day with this brilliance, this safety, this strength, this openness within my heart? And you remember it. And then after your 5 or 10 minutes are up, if you're just doing that for the heart today, then you go about your day. And then throughout the day, if you start to feel yourself locking down a little bit, getting tense, not feeling as clear or radiant in the heart area, just go back and remember the feeling that you had after your meditation when you did this and invite it to come forth. Just let it. You're not forcing it. You just imagine, what would it be like if it just was able to flow freely now? And in time, you'll notice it just starts to happen easier. But it does take practice. It does take skill, which is really just practice. And then in time, your heart becomes clearer, freer, more open. You become more responsive to life, and you realize that you are part of the wholeness of life. Now, the next step, again, 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you have extra time, you want to bring your awareness to your mind. And I like to feel the space between my eyebrows, my forehead, as though it's just like relaxing. We usually have a lot of tension. I often see people meditating in groups and it's like they're trying real hard, and you can see them just pinching up right here. Let go of that. Just gently lift your eyebrows and feel as though this area is spreading and relaxing. This will help to bring activity and possibly blood flow to the frontal regions of your brain, which can be very helpful in this regard. And then again, letting the breath be the anchor. You know what it feels like when you feel trapped in your mind, when you can't see any way out of something, and it feels like it's just always going to be the way it is, and you're always going to be experiencing things the way that you do now, and it feels very constricting and tight and claustrophobic. And when you get into those patterns, often you really think that that's the only way it is. Like you are stuck. There's nothing else you can do. And sometimes that's just life. That's the way it goes. But more often than not, it's habit. So what do? You want to first, as we did before, just be aware if you have tension or relaxation within this area of the frontal regions of the brain, the forehead, and just try to look at your mind. Do you feel stuck in some way? Do you feel like something's just always going to go bad, or you just can't shake this negative habit, or something like that? And it just feels tight and claustrophobic in your head and in your brain. So the way to counteract that is, after you've meditated, and you should probably already feel a little bit lighter after meditation, is simply feel the area, acknowledge how you feel, and then again, invite a sense of light and spaciousness. Imagine that you feel freer. There are more opportunities, there are more possibilities, and you might not know what they are, but they're there. It's like you're vaguely aware of them, and you're willing to let them come into focus. And you invite this light and this brilliance into your mind. And when I do it, I imagine, it's almost as if I imagine my whole brain just being filled with light. It's like my skull is just filling up with light, and it's light and it's radiant and it's shining through. And that starts the process. And then I just simply imagine that I am free in space, that all this stuff that seems so serious, it's okay. I can just let it go for a little while, because there's other possibilities. This light can come in and expand my mind and my consciousness and help me to see new ways, help me to understand new possibilities, help me grow and appreciate the greater intelligence in the world that I might not be able to tap into as a little human being, but it's there and it's accessible, and I'm willing to entertain the notion that it's possible for me to recognize that and attune to that. And the feeling you want to bring up is really a sense of openness and lightness. Again, it's a feeling as if, as you're sitting there meditating, as though you just want to float upwards, like as though gravity is letting go, and your torso and your head and your neck are just light and able to flow upwards. While again, holding a sense of radiance, of brilliance within the mind, within the brain. Or you can imagine that there's this big field of all of your thoughts, and they're all kind of clustered together, but now the field is growing bigger, so there's more space between the thoughts. And through that space, light shines in. And through that light, there are other ways of thinking that I was not aware of. And again, you may experience these realizations in meditation. It's possible. Or it may be that as you go about your day or your week or your month, as you're doing this, you really start to become aware of other ways of thinking about things, other ways of understanding, other possibilities, and your mind becomes clearer and lighter. Now, again, you need to pay attention to this stuff as it happens, because otherwise you'll just keep reverting back to your old ways. And we want to, like a seed coming out of the dirt or the ground. It's okay, you grow out of that stuff, but you want to entertain the possibility of growing towards more light, growing towards more nourishment from the sun or the spiritual sun. So it's really very simple, and it requires just finding a way to hold these feelings, these actual physical, visceral feelings, and these possibilities within the mind, and these images of light within the brain and within the mind that will help to enlighten the heart and enlighten the mind. And of course, enlighten your whole experience from that point forward. So you will be able to appreciate and make the most of opportunities that come your way. You'll be able to see opportunities that weren't there anymore. If you're dealing with difficulties or difficult circumstances, you will be able to see them in perspective to your learning process, or how it relates to understanding just the processes of life in general. It brings more spaciousness, more clarity. And ideally, you would want to do this with both the heart and the mind. 5 minutes with the heart, 5 minutes with the mind. However, if you don't have that much time after you meditate, well, just kind of get a sense of which one do you think you need to pay attention to more so today. Or habitually, maybe you have one that you need to pay more attention to. And just spend that 5 to 10 minutes on the heart or the mind, whichever you choose, for that day. But experiment with both, get into both, and take your time with it, and don't rush. Don't expect this to radically change you overnight. Sometimes it does. And usually people who've meditated longer, who've meditated longer effectively, they tend to respond more quickly to this process. But if you're a new meditator, it's just like anything else. You're learning to grow into a new way of being. And you have to be able to embrace that, to accept that, to allow that to be a possibility for you. Because you can't stay the same. You can't keep doing what you've been doing all of your life. Doesn't matter how old you are. Youthfulness, life is eternal. And the body will age and the mind will do what it's going to do. But it's that inner ability to maintain this lightness and this adaptability and this clarity, which ultimately determines how alive you are for the duration of your life. You can be a meditator and committed to your spiritual path and say you have the most wonderful guru in the world. But if you stop growing inwardly at the age of 25, or you're just going to stay where you were as a 25-year-old. And Mr. Davis, he was always interested. He was always curious. He was always working on new projects, exploring new things, clear up until the last time I saw him, when he was almost 90. And one of the things that many people would always say when they would listen to Mr. Davis or meet with him is just how with it he seemed, and how connected he seemed. Versus, sometimes when you meet people who are maybe a little, they don't have to be older, but usually they're older. Sometimes they're very young, but they're just kind of locked in their pattern and their way. And you're not really talking to someone who's paying attention. You're just talking to someone who's a conglomeration of responses that they've found works well. So they've turned that into what they are. And then they really don't veer too much from that. And so, of course, their life experience becomes a little more limited. Everyone does their best, so that's not to be judgmental, but we want to make sure that you have as much life and flexibility and clarity and light as possible. And this is a very easy way of doing it. And it's a lifelong practice, a very simple lifelong practice that you can include in your inner work, your inner training as a Kriya yogi at the end of your meditation.